But
Hello.
we will start a quarter after.
We are live.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. We are live. The next one, we have Janine from UL Solutions Software Intel Systems. Janine is the lead strategic area cybersecurity, and she will dive into the complex regulatory landscape of automotive cybersecurity, challenges of national standards. It's even hard to speak about it, the name of the lecture. So good luck, Janine. Enjoy your talk.
So hello to a great community who is interested to make our streets more secure, and that globally. So as introduced, my name is Janine Funke. I'm leading the strategic area at US Solutions Software Intensive System. Within this role, actually, I'm consulting our clients on automotive cybersecurity topics, conducting assessments, and also support for internal audits, for example, and also responsible for business development and services in that area. So today, as introduced, I would like to talk about the challenges of national standards. On the next slide, just a little disclaimer, which is always to be found within our slides, but don't worry about that. Then let me quickly introduce UL as a company, as they are also sponsoring my time here. So UL is a global leader in applied safety science. Basically, we are transforming safety, security, and also sustainability challenges and make it into opportunities for customers, and that is in more than 110 countries. So UL is delivering testing, inspection, and certification services, plus also software and advisory services. You may also know the UL certification mark. That is basically serving as a recognized symbol in our customers' products. And we also help our customers to launch new products and services and kind of navigate through the global markets and the complex supply chains. So within US Solutions, my department, or we are the consulting branch. This is very important due to the impartiality. There's a separation between certification and advisory. So we are part of the just today launched new brand Software Intensive Systems, which is basically the three former brands Kugler Mark, Method Park, and KVA together. So we are covering all those topics which are listed here. Our core areas besides cybersecurity are automotive spies, functional safety, autonomy safety, agility, systems engineering, where we do various consulting topics, so to say. So today I want to talk about cybersecurity within the different regions and its challenges. First, I would like to start with some basics, namely the UNICE market and the most important ISO standards. This is a little bit of repetition maybe, and most of you know, but those standards will be the ones which also have major influence on the other national regulations, and therefore I want to talk about them first. So the regulations highlighted in these presentations are not at all complete. There are more countries, more regulations, but we would not have time to cover everything today. But currently, those are for me the most discussed ones, and therefore we will dive into Europe, Japan, South Korea, and China. So on the next slide, we are starting with the UNICE. Actually, the UNICE World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulation, which is also called Working Party 29, is actually a quite fascinating global initiative because it has been around for over 50 years now with almost 60 member states. The aim is to have harmonized vehicle regulations, which are consistent across borders, and harmonized regulations mean smoother international trade due to mutual recognition from approvals granted by one contracting party, so one contracting member country, which is also recognized by others. There are two major regulations which must be implemented into national law by the member states, and that is the R155, talking about cybersecurity management system, and the R156, talking about software update and software update management system. So this is basis for also other national regulations. Then next, I would like to introduce the ISO standards. Actually, ISO standards are not legally binding, but they are highly recognized and also established to show state-of-the-art development. So first, the ISO SAE 21464, which is the most popular standard talking about how to establish a cybersecurity management system, how to manage risks along the life cycle of the product. Currently, it is decided if the project for the next version of the 21464 is kicked off the next year or 2026. But to be honest, if the project is kicked off for the second edition, this will still take a long time. So it is expected earliest 2028 that we have the final version for the second edition. Then we have the ISO Pass 5112, which is talking about guidelines for auditing cybersecurity engineering. So basically, if you want to know how to audit a cybersecurity management system and providing some guidelines, questions, objectives, criteria, this is the right standard to have a look at it. Then we have the ISO SAE Pass, like publicly available specification 8475, cybersecurity assurance level. What is that? Actually, we already had a presentation, which we're also dealing with cybersecurity assurance level. Just give a quick heads up. So it should help you to classify and communicate the required rigor for cybersecurity measures. And the most important thing, along the supply chain, that should be supported. Basically, the higher the level, the more rigorous the security measures need to be. Then we have the targeted attack feasibility, which is a concept to evaluate how likely and feasible it is for a targeted attack to succeed after cybersecurity controls are applied. The ISO project was extended recently, and the timeline for publishing this is probably end of 2025, so it was a little bit shifted, but realistically beginning of 2026 till everything is set. Then we have the technical report 8477, which is talking about verification and validation, which is also under development. And this is also aiming to provide guidelines and best practices for ensuring that cybersecurity measures are effectively tested, validated. It also includes strategic approaches, references for methods, techniques, and further. It is also expected to be finalized in 2025. However, still there are a lot of discussions open, so that could be also taking a little bit more time. Then let's dive into more regional specifics. The European Union has, first I would like to introduce the Network and Information System Directive 2, which is having an effect to the automotive industry. In general, it aims to make the EU more resilient to cyber attacks and also protect critical infrastructure services, which the automotive industry is. It is mainly happening on organizational level, and it also requires the companies, therefore, to adopt proactive measures to manage risks, prevent cybersecurity incidents, and also respond to any breaches that may occur. As I said, it includes sectors that are critical to the EU economy and therefore the automotive industry. And by including this industry, the NIS2 directive is also aiming to protect cyber incidents or to protect against the cyber incidents, and also to prevent that production is disrupted and there's a compromise of vehicle safety, or there's any financial reputational damage, which could also then occur for the automotive manufacturers. Then we have the general safety regulation. Basically, this is setting out type approval requirements and also incorporates and implements UNR 155 and UNR 156 on a national level. And also it is defining the scope and the enforcement dates. So the UN EC regulations need to be implemented on a national level for the member countries. The scope is also a little bit different, as the GSR, for example, for the 155 part, implementation is not including vehicle category O, as it is stated. This is also a problem for the Cyber Resilience Act, or let's say a challenge. So generally, the Cyber Resilience Act is now on product level, and therefore it is quite aligned with the NIS directive, because the NIS is more on organizational level, and now you're having the CRA, which is more on product level. So basically, it also aims to enhance Europe's cyber resilience for the cybersecurity, or for the cybersecurity of the products which are sold and which are having digital components. This is also true for connected vehicles and for its components. What is now the critical aspect? The CRA does recognize the GSR, so no double regulation. Everything what is in scope of the GSR is not under the scope from the CRA. But the R155 implementation is only valid for OEMs. What about the supply chain? The supply chain now would fall under the CRA. This is challenging because the OEMs already forced their suppliers to set up a cybersecurity management system, so applying to ISO SAE 214C4. The CRA, as it has like a different classification schemes of product, and also from self-assessment to certification, another approach, would put additional workload to the manufacturers. From seen as compared, the risk management framework is quite similar, but the CRA has its uniques. Therefore, it would make more sense if also the supply chain would fall in the scope of the GSR, for example, and not within the Cyber Resilience Act. Moreover, Category O, as I just mentioned, trailers. The Category O is also not in scope of the R155 from the GSR implementation, and is also possibly to fall under the CRA. Now, as also the trailer companies are in the automotive industry, it would also make more sense for them to establish a cybersecurity management system and not to apply the Cyber Resilience Act. Another topic is also free and open source. So the Cyber Resilience Act could be interpreted that free and open source organizations are held responsible for fulfilling the obligations of the Cyber Resilience Act, as they are developers of a product. But they do it for free, and so the position also from the automotive industry is that the companies who are using it commercially and not developing it actually should be in the position to fulfill the CRA. That was about the Cyber Resilience Act. The last topic is the GDPR, but this will be also a topic for the panel discussion later. But I briefly want to summarize that it is basically a comprehensive data protection law, which is also enacted by the European Union, but that was already in 2018. And it applies to all organizations which are processing the personal data of individuals within the EU. And this is regardless of where the organization is based. So it could be a Chinese OEM, could be a German OEM. And the automotive industry, particularly now with the rise of connected vehicles, handles a lot of personal data, including location information, driving habits, vehicle diagnostics, and so on. So let's have a look at Japan. Actually, first I want to talk about a guideline, not a regulation, but I think it's worth mentioning it because it has a detailed nature, and it has very good implications for implementation for the support of other regulations. The JAMA JAPI Cybersecurity Guidelines, which were updated in 2023, are actually designed to enhance cybersecurity measures within the whole automotive industry in Japan. These guidelines are also developed by the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association, so JAMA, and the Japan Auto Parts Industries Association, JAPAA. So they provide detailed recommendations for managing cybersecurity risk across the supply chain. That was also very important for them, that the whole supply chain is included. And it should be used as a kind of industry-wide self-assessment criteria. But it covers mostly the organizational level. We do not have too much on the product level here. But with that guideline, they are also trying to align with UNR 155 because they are providing specific recommendations that help manufacturers to comply, especially on organizational level. There's also a handbook available for this guideline, which is putting more interpretation and explanation here of the selected objectives of the actual guideline. And then I also want to highlight another law. This is the Act on Protection of Personal Information, and this is Japan's primary data protection law. And it has also like similar, so to say, obligations as the GDPR in Europe. But it is said that the GDPR, for example, is more stringent in terms of consent requirements and data transfer requirements. So if you want to discuss that a little bit more deeper, you can also use the panel discussions and ask detailed questions about that. Let's talk about South Korea. I think this is also quite important, what is going on there. And actually, the Korea Motor Vehicle Management Act is in generally managing motor vehicles and is ensuring, for example, the performance and the safety of motor vehicles regarding their registration, regarding safety standards. They have a self-certification scheme. They describe the maintenance, the testing of motor vehicles, and in general, the motor vehicle management business. So their newest version of these guidelines and the amendments are designed to harmonize with UNR 155, and therefore they ensuring that the cybersecurity measures in place meet the international standards. However, we have a challenge here. The UNR 155 cannot be fully applied as Korea does not have the same type approval system. South Korea uses a self-certification system for safety and security and does not use the type approval as it is described in the UNR 155. But manufacturers must establish a cybersecurity management system and also receive certification from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, but only, meaning only certificates that have been reviewed and issued by this ministry are also recognized by the Motor Vehicle Management Act. On product level, so on vehicle type level, we do then have the self-assessment. Actually, South Korea has adopted a phased approach. They were starting with guidelines based on the UNR 155, and we're moving slowly towards legislative integration now. So the enforcement date is August 2025 for new vehicles and 2027 for all vehicles. But I also have to mention that Korea has different vehicle categories. This is also described in the Korea Motor Vehicle Management Act. So they are not the same as the vehicle category M and O and so on, which we know from Europe, for example. Then the last region I want to talk about is cybersecurity in mainland China. I will have some details about the cybersecurity law, the data security law, the personal information protection law, and the most important thing, the ICV framework for intelligent and connected vehicles. So automotive cybersecurity must always be seen and interpreted under those three laws. They are the highest level and most powerful legal documents for all industries in mainland China, so laws in general. Cybersecurity, the cybersecurity law is providing some general principles for network security. Then the data security law is governing, for example, the creation, the use, the storage, and also the transfer of data within China, but also activities outside of China if they harm the national security or also the public interest. Then we have the personal information protection law, which applies to processing of the personal information within China, but also has extraterritorial application if the processing is affected or is affected by Chinese citizens. So those three laws must be taken into consideration when diving deeper into the framework. So specific for the automotive industry, the Intelligent and Connected Vehicle ICV standard system is a comprehensive framework which is developed to guide the development and also the implementation of intelligent and connected vehicle technologies. It is not only cybersecurity related, it supports a lot of topics for, as we would say, maybe SDV, so software-defined vehicle. So it supports the establishment of autonomous driving, has topics like vehicle to everything communication and also other smart vehicle functions. The system wants to evolve and prepare the technologies coming up in the next years. Therefore, they started in the year 2017 with the development of a guideline which released targets for the year 2020 and 2025. Then in the year 2022, we had a first draft of the ICV standard system, which was mainly addressing driving assistance and low-level automated driving. Then we had an update in 2023, which was then concentrating on the general functions of combined driving assistance and also automated driving. Future music the aim from the Chinese government until the year 2025 is to have an ICV standard system ready with more than 100 standards, which is also applicable for general functions or also automated driving. And then in the year 2020-30, when they see, okay, until this time we can have like automated driving, from a technology point of view and a law perspective more and more implemented, then they want to have more than 150 standards which are ready for the harmonized development of single vehicle intelligent and also systematic multi-vehicle connectivity. So how does that look like? Here we can see the current published version of the framework, which was already like 2023, which is covering different aspects. Like we see here safety, we see here security, we see here HMI, but it is also very specific on technologies. So if you look on the right side in the category application of products and technology, it specifies technology like automated or assisted driving functions. So it's more like a cross-metric systems where you have in general topics like security and safety, but also some specific technologies and functions. If we now take a deeper look into the aspect of cybersecurity. So there's a little, I would say, sub-standard system, which is here the cybersecurity and data security standard system, which are mainly sub-standards of the big system. And here I want to highlight the category 202 and 602, because I want to show you which kind of synergies we are having here. So vehicle cybersecurity in the blue box on the one side, and security monitoring and emergency management on the right side. So on this next slide, I wanted to highlight just a few GBs or GBTs, which are now mandatory or in establishment or planned in China. So maybe a good thing to know is that GB is like a standard, like the name of for a standard is the GB. And if there's the GBT, then it is more like recommended. If it is a GB, then it's mandatory. But to be honest, it's not quite sure how the distinction is, because sometimes if a GBT is also referenced in another law or regulation, then it also can become mandatory. So basically, you should always prepare for both the GB and the GBT. So that would be my advice, so to say. If we look at the 202 category, we can here find two GBs. This is the GB 44495 2024, which was just published last month. This is technical requirements for vehicle cybersecurity. It will be enforced in 2026, and it is based on the UNEC R155 with some mainland China specific requirements. What is most interesting about this GB is that from the R155 Annex 5, threat and mitigations are transformed and considered into technical requirements in the actual normative GB chapters. And it is also specifying testing methods for those. So basically, the informative content or parts of the informative content from the R155 is translated into normative content from the respective GB. And also within the annex, you can find specific testing methods to test these additional requirements. Then we have the GB 44496 2024, which is very similar to the UNECE R156, and also with some specifics, and it was also just published the last month. So for this GB, there are also testing methods specified, which we do not have in the R156. And also the scope is a little bit different in the application of the vehicle categories for those two. Then I want to highlight a little bit the future, which is shown here into the category 602. This is Road Vehicle Cybersecurity Engineering. This GB is not yet published. I personally do not yet know a GB number for that. It's in establishment. There is a draft available, and it is transformed from the ISO SAE 214C4. From my perspective, I would say it's a 95% translation from the 214C4, but there are also some additional information in terms of examples, because they wanted to be more specific on examples and provide also more guidance on that. But it's still in draft. It could change when the official version is then released. Then it is planned also to have a transformation from the ISO Pass 5112, which is talking about the auditing guidelines. But for that, I have not seen a draft yet, and this is like planned to be established, but that should come, and this is also within the plan and the strategy for 2025 and further. So let's summarize and maybe have a little outlook. We can see that automotive cybersecurity faces the challenge here of really meeting various international and also regional regulations. Especially in the USA, we have also a lot of regional regulations, but the topic of USA would be like an additional one, which I had no time to cover here. And what is the good thing is that the national automotive cybersecurity regulations, as I try to make a bridge here also to the other regulations, is mainly building upon the R155 and the ISO SAE 214C4 regulations, because they had the first mover advantage. And also, if you have a look at the other regulations, if they do not mention a cybersecurity management system, they are more or less also building upon the risk management framework, where also as DSMS would build upon. So you're always like in a good shape if you go for a cybersecurity management system, and then implement more regional specifics. Then we see that national data privacy regulations also have a significant impact here, because those exist industry agnostic, and those need to be always considered in addition to the automotive cybersecurity specific ones. Then I was also showing to you mainland China and its framework. There will be a lot of more standards and regulations. We need to wait for them, closely monitor them, and also the industry has to react and implement them if the industry players also want to sell their cars in China. But there's a lot of more to come than in other countries. Then a little outlook maybe. India is also preparing regulation. So we have the AIS 189, which is covering the cybersecurity management system, and the AIS 190, which is covering the software update management system, but they are still in draft stage. They are very, very similar from the draft perspective, but there will be some specifics like covering the possibilities of the technologies in the different regions in India, for example. There are different bandwidth, for example, available, and therefore they are also asking you to consider the India specifics and the infrastructure also available in India. So basically, that was my talk about the various and complex regulatory landscape. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free. Of course, I could not cover everything, and there's so many regulations, and I could talk like for hours about that. And even for the European regulations, there are like even more specifics which we could explain. But yeah, I think to have like an overview and to know, okay, in which direction and which kind of regulations you can have a look at. Yeah, I think that was the aim from that perspective. And now, yes, Michael, I think we have time for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janine. It's really, really complicated topic. There's a lot of inputs. It was very informative. Thank you very much. And we have a plenty of questions, so I will start running them on the screen. So the first one, the most popular one, the initial one.
Yes, so let me maybe read it. I understand that this landscape is completely different to safety, where there's just a single standard. So the question is how to cope with this wealth of regulations and expectations, especially when it comes to homologation for different markets. And so first of all, we have to see that safety is quite old and like it's a quite extensive standard. And and mostly we have here the ISO standard with the 26262. And this ISO standard is and ISO standards are evolving. So now we had the first edition from the 2144. There will come the second, the third, and so on edition, and there will be more and more content. And we also see that with the technical report and with the publicly available specification, which we now have with CalTAF and verification and validation, there's also a lot more guidance needed. So it is also expected, but I cannot foresee the future, then maybe in 10 years, we also have like a very, very vast framework here for cybersecurity, and that the standard maybe is growing. And also, as we have seen in China, safety is also considered here within the framework. So they will also integrate 26262 aspects into their framework, and also other nations handling the safety within other standards. So there must be always a harmonization, because this is also in the interest of the countries. China also wants to sell the vehicles in like outside of China and inside of China. So there must be always a kind of harmonization, and that is what we see also at the moment. But of course, there are country specifics, and those country specifics must always be applied and adhered to. So yes, it will be more complex in the future with a more complex technology, basically.
Yeah, and it's a good point, I think, Janine, that safety and security are coming together to the one point. So you cannot like split them eventually in the future. Cybersecurity is also relates to safety.
Yes, maybe one topic is also that there's a project ongoing, also in terms of the 2144, which is taking care of the harmonization between safety and security, mainly in terms of terms and definitions, but also other aspects. So the industry already heard that more harmonization and alignment is needed, and there's a specific working group which is already working on, and there's more harmonization also expected in the future.
Yeah, at least on vocabulary, they want to align before they go into the standard themselves. Yeah, so let's go to the next question.
Yes, should OEMs who want to sell cars in China be concerned with loss of IP due to having to comply with these laws, or is it a risk that has largely been accepted anyway? Yes, this is an interesting question, because before the GB was released, there were some trial audits, and the certification bodies in China were identifying joint venture parties which were like conducting this trail audits for a cybersecurity management system, and they were identifying Chinese OEMs and suppliers. So for the Chinese OEMs and suppliers, there were different challenges than for the joint venture. For example, for the joint ventures, the Chinese teams did not have every TARA documents available. And how can you then like judge a cybersecurity management system from a joint venture if half of the documentation is outside of China and the teams do not have really like access to that? So actually, this was noticed by the authorities in China, and it is said that there will be a guideline maybe available that more specifically addresses this joint venture versus Chinese OEMs and supplier topic. However, yeah, the loss of IP is still a topic, And with more enforcement power from China, there's also more enforcement to have more IP or more documents available if the regulations, the GBs, are addressing that. So there's not really a point of rescuing something if it becomes a regulation. But let's see how the GB framework, this ICB framework, is developing in the future.
Thank you, Janine. Let's move to other question.
Yes, a good question. Any regulations and standard for agricultural machines vehicle type? Yes, there is one. Unfortunately, I cannot recall the number because this working group just started. So there's an ISO group, working group who's working on that. I will look it up and put it in the chat afterwards. So there's already like a name of the working group, but I cannot remember the exact number. But yes, cybersecurity for agricultural machines is worked on. Started, so to say. It will take a few years, of course, until everything is ready.
But currently, the agriculture machines are not under this UNR 155 or ISO 21434 umbrella, so it's like different working group.
Yeah, so they try to be out of that and have so no, it's about the ISO standard, not the UNECE standard. From the UNECE standard, there's also a special vehicle part, and in some countries there are also different enforcement dates.
Thank you for the clarification. And the next question is regarding the Chinese standards in English.
As far as we know, unfortunately not. So there's no official translation. So our team in China, for example, from our company, they are translating that, and there are a lot of other companies who are like offering the services of translating those Chinese standards. But so far, as I heard, you have to do it by yourself. And I just use the magic from our Chinese team in Shanghai. Also, big thank to them at this point. So unfortunately, not of my knowledge, not an official one from the Chinese authorities.
Thank you very much. US market.
We have some best practices from the NHTSA, from the National Highway Administrative. So they incorporated some basic principles also from the R155 and the ISO 21434 within their best practices. Also, NIST is having in general cybersecurity risk management framework. So there are some guidelines, best practices, but there's no regulation so far on a national level, as also type approval is different, and also there are a lot of state laws which also need to be applicable, but they did not enforce something like a CSMS or a SUMS so far.
There is additional part for this question for somebody else. There is some rumors about joining or applying UNR on them, but as you answered, probably it's still not there, correct?
Actually, they have like this kind of right as China to not apply the UNECE regulations. So they are kind of they are contributing also, and they are also interested in working with the UNECE standards and give also a lot of comments, but they have the right to, or like a veto right to say that they do not want to implement the UNR, the UN regulations. So they are, China and the USA have a specific or special membership here.
Thank you. OSCCA certification.
Actually, I'm not very familiar with this OSCCA certification. Therefore, I would invite Julien Perret to discuss with me afterwards and to deep dive and check also for other team members if they have more information about that.
Thank you. Security features and project
Considering that there are already some security feature requirements in project, what is the best way to fulfill these regulation in tier 1, tier 2 level? So basically, as the regulations are quite broad, what is helping, I think, is, for example, the ISO on verification and validation, because it explains a little bit which kind of measures can be done on which level. And then there are also some best practices available within NIST, for example, which are also specifying that. But yeah, it's like an interesting part, as we see with the Cyber Resilience Act. So if supplier are falling in that scheme, and then they also have to extend with the CE mark, this is definitely challenging. But I would say for automotive cybersecurity, set up a cybersecurity management system, and then also try to scope which chapter is applicable for you as a tier 1 or tier 2 or not. Validation, as it is described in the 2144 on vehicle level, may not, but you may have an own interpretation of validation. You are may contributing to the validation of the integrator of the next level in the supply chain. So there will be standards which give a little bit more guidance on that. But the basic thing is to implement a cybersecurity management system and to address it towards your needs.
Thank you. You have huge amount of questions, so we continue here.
Okay. I was wondering if updating softwares in vehicles according to UNR 155 counts as cloud computing, which is also regulated under NIS2 directive. This is also an interesting question, to be honest. So I would see in general, as the automotive industry is part of the critical infrastructure, also those high-level requirements. I mean, we have to say that NIS2 is really also on a high level, could also work to securing the cloud for software updates, and I definitely see here an interface, but I haven't deep dived into that topic so far. But I definitely also see here some interfaces, because the NIS2 in general wants the company to be secured, and all the information systems basically should be secured. Therefore, this would also kind of count in and has some interfaces with the ISMS also.
And I think the UNR, the 156, not explicitly talking about on the air update, it's just talking about vehicle update. So it's not only on cloud, whatever you want. So
yes, there's a specific part on OTA updates, but it's mainly, and I think this is also a misunderstanding what the industry has, and people think that the R156 is mainly addressing the over-the-air updates, but it's actually every update which has an impact to the homologation. And yeah, so it's also covered. It's also covered within the R156.
Okay, let's have an additional couple of questions. So,
do you see CRA as a complementary standard to R155? What is the position of tier 1X, considering that they have to possibly comply to both of the standards? There's a quite interesting VDA position paper on that, which is also explaining from the association point of view what kind of challenges and what kind of risks they see. And also within that position paper, they are describing what kind of amendment they would like to have within the Cyber Resilience Act, and that, for example, suppliers also fall under the GSR, or how to amend specific topics, and that it is more easier for suppliers to in general apply to cybersecurity. So the easiest point, of course, would be if they would fall under the GSR, have the cybersecurity management system, and as no double regulation is allowed, then the CRA would be not applicable for the scope which is falling under the GSR. So that would be the easiest thing. But like, I'm also member of the DINE K11 cybersecurity committee, which is discussing the next version of the 2144 or also the other standards. And we also talked last week about if there's like any update, but so far the European Union has no answer to that. So there are positions, there's lobbying done from the automotive industry perspective, and they say that they want to consider it and avoid double regulation. And there are also other topics going on, for example, an own cybersecurity standard for automotive chips, or for chips in general, which is not automotive specific, which then goes to the automotive industry. So there are some, I would say, actions going on to prevent the tiers to have like additional effort and so on, but it is not finalized. So there's no final decision, and we have to wait a little bit more until more details are coming out.
Thank you. And the last question we will take in the session and continue on the out of the stage, but it's related to what you discussed about GBT and more concrete testing and UNR, more generic one.
Yes. So basically, the testing methods within the GBs need to be adhered to. So they have to be checked. And on the other level, they are so high level described that I would assume that you would check them anyway. So basically, if you are doing a mapping of the testing methods and also the requirements, I think you would already within the R155 and R156 perspective, they would be already covered. So this is my impression that I have. If there is a change in the R155 and the R156, could be because China is very active in to push or to influence also the UNECE regulations. Let's see what the harmonization is bringing, or if the ISO standards, for example, see the needs to have more testing specified there. So that could happen. Maybe not likely, my personal opinion, but I also do not see like a big additional effort here.
Thank you for this clarification. And let's take the last question. We're out of time, but this is the last one. And go to launch.
So vehicle L. Actually, this year there was the information that from the UNECE regulation, the category L is now inside of scope, but there was no update from the European regulation. As I said, the UNECE regulation must be implemented into national law. So as far as I know, but not 100% sure, it is not implemented yet. And there's also, there are new, or there from a UNECE perspective, there are also different enforcement categories. So dates, sorry. So I think for L, it is somewhat 2029, but it still needs to implement into the national law. But L has a little bit more time from the R155 perspective.
Thank you very much, Janine. It was a very, very interesting talk. I think audience also received it very positive. And let's meet you everyone in the lounge. And if you have more questions, thanks again.
Thank you very much.